Okay, so now if you're feeling relatively comfortable with playing G, A, B, and then also B, A, G, we're going to move on to the other two notes in what we're calling here the lower hand. And here I want to give you just another quick disclaimer. I promise these will become less and less regular as these videos go on, just kind of getting this stuff out of the way up front. There are going to be all kinds of different like small variations and sometimes big variations in what we might call bagpipe theory. So if you're using these videos as supplemental help as you're taking instruction from a private instructor, always default to what your private instructor tells you. You know, after you've been playing bagpipes for a while, you'll be able to start forming your own opinions. You might say, okay, well, I disagreed with this person, but I agree with that person, and I've actually found my own way for this other thing. So what I'm presenting here is just one way among many, and that might be disconcerting to hear, but I mean, the variations usually are going to be pretty small. You know, in general, what I'm giving you is good information, but if your instructor has something else to say, go with what your instructor says, and especially if you're going to be playing with a band, always, always, always default to what your pipe major says, because you're part of a group and your priority should be the group, and it does the group no good to have the pipe major say, in this instance, I'm classifying everything from G up to D as the lower hand, because that makes sense to me. But some folks would say that it's just from G up to C, and that D begins the upper hand. So there you can see it's a tiny variation, but you're going to do nobody any good if you go and sit down in your first pipe practice and your pipe major says, all right, we're going to do a scale on the lower hand and then a scale on the upper hand. Honestly, no pipe major would probably ever do that. But if they did, and they said, all right, here's your lower hand, and they go up to C and then go back down, and you raise your hand and say, excuse me, you forgot D, that's part of the lower hand. Just go with what the pipe major says. And in most cases, your pipe major, if there's a difference between what your pipe major says and what I say, your pipe major is probably right. I'm just some dude. So take everything from this video series with a grain of salt and be open to, you know, other ways of doing things. So that out of the way, now we're going to work on C and D. So up till now, it's been pretty simple. You got all your fingers on the chanter, and all you had to do was lift fingers to get different notes to come out. C is a little bit different. So from G to A to B, we now have our pinky and ring finger off of the chanter. And following that pattern, you'd think that just by lifting a middle finger, we'd get C. We kind of do, but the difference in, so here, listen to this and see if you can detect any difference in sound. If I'm playing with my 3 fingers up here, my pinky, ring finger, and middle finger up, versus putting my pinky down, okay? I'm not sure how well that'll come through the microphone, and then of course it also has your speakers or headphones to get through as well. But if you can hear it, there is a slight change in, I'm not sure if it gets into pitch, but at least sort of tone, it does change the sound a bit. But when you get onto bagpipes, that's going to change the sound quite a lot. And so it's important that you put your pinky down when you get to C. So here's how I like to remember that. This little guy right here, my fingers look kind of like a C, right? Maybe it's a backward C. I don't know. I can't think very clearly. If I look at it that way, yeah, I think that's right. So from the tip of your pointer finger to the tip of your pinky, it looks kind of like a C. So G, A, B, that's all simple. C gets just a little bit more complicated. You lift the middle finger and put down the pinky at the same time. And this trick is going to become the challenge for a lot of note transitions throughout the rest of the scale. You will be lifting fingers and dropping fingers at exactly the same time. So at first, it might go something like this. You see what happened there? I lifted my middle finger and then put down my pinky. That's okay, that's how you get started. But what we want to have happening is a clean snap where the where the middle finger and pinky move at exactly the same time. So you'd have a so I guess if I were to slow this down, probably the pinky starts moving, and right as it's making contact with the chanter, boom, the middle finger comes off. So you have this clean little transition. We start to get something called crossing noises or crossover sounds when we don't have simultaneous movement of fingers. And once again, that's way more obvious on the bagpipes than it is on the practice chanter, but it matters a lot. And so we want to focus in on it on the practice chanter. And once you can hear it in your own playing, you're well on your way, because when you can hear it, that means you can fix it. So let's see if we can get a detectable crossing noise here. So if I, for example, put down my pinky and then lift up my middle finger, here's what it sounds like. You catch that? So we don't want to have do, re. We also don't want to have that's a little harder to detect, but it's the same kind of thing. We have a change in pitch or tonality, kind of a change in sound quality from this to this, right? Or from, let me think here, from this to this to this, right? So we want to go pinky up for A, ring finger up for B, middle finger up and pinky down for C, okay? So let's try just a transition from B to C. Let's do it 5 times together. And just a heads up, a few times here, you're probably going to have the situation where your middle finger comes up fine, your pinky goes down, but it doesn't hit the hole, right? So you might have to kind of go and then find it. That's okay, just keep practicing and you'll get it down eventually. So here we go, from B to C. Middle finger comes up and pinky goes down. And again. Two more. Last one. Now, just like before, we're now going to go from top to bottom. We're going to go C down to B. And if you're starting to master lifting your middle finger while putting down your pinky, now you got to master putting down your middle finger while lifting your pinky. All the same concepts apply, it's just opposite order. So let's do it really slow first. We got a C, and then we're going to start bringing this middle finger down, and right as it makes contact with the chanter, the pinky snaps up. So let's do that 3 times together. Last one. Now, go ahead and pause the video and go over that a few times. Go B to C, C to B. So now you've got the B to C and C to B down. From C to the last note for the bottom hand, which is D, we're back to beautiful simplicity. All you do is lift that pointer finger. Make sure the pinky stays on the chanter, okay? Pinky's on there for C and it stays there for D. So really easy, C, and there's your D. This is where it's funky for anybody who's played music before. You're like, oh, wait a minute, that's a half step. That's not a whole step. That's because this is actually kind of like C sharp to D. And then try doing it backwards. It's great when we're playing this note because your pointer finger is usually way more dexterous than your other fingers, especially that ring finger. Anything that involves the ring finger is especially challenging, but most stuff that involves the pointer finger, pretty easy because we just use our pointer fingers a lot. So now we're going to do a full run of the lower hand. I'm going to start on low G, then we'll lift our pinky for A, lift our ring finger for B. Tricky part, we'll lift our middle finger and put down our pinky for C, and then we'll lift our pointer finger for D. So here we go, we're going to do it together really, really slowly. I'll try to kind of move the chanter to indicate when we're moving to the next note. Here we go. Let's do that again. And And here, remember, relax your fingers. Sometimes it might be helpful to just take your hands off, kind of stretch a little bit, maybe do some of these. Get your fingers nice and relaxed. Here we go, we're doing that again. Let's do it one more time. I'm going to turn to the side a little bit. Maybe that'll be easier to see how the fingers move. Here we go. Good. And if it'll be useful to you, now just go back up the video and run through those a few more times. When you're feeling pretty good about it, now we're going to try going down the scale. Once again, this is always harder, so don't get down on yourself, because you start making progress thinking, I got this, do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, and then we start going do-do-do-do-do, and you feel like a newborn baby. All of a sudden, you're learning how to walk. So don't feel bad about that. Just a few times through, and you'll feel just as comfortable going down as you do going up. So here we go. We're going to start on D, so that means your pinky is down. My thumb back here, it's just there to support the chanter. You know, it's not doing anything. So your pinky is down, your pointer, middle finger, and ring finger are all up. This is our D. Then we're going to drop the pointer, easy, that's our C. Here's the tricky part. We're going to drop the middle finger, and right when it touches the chanter, we're going to pop that pinky up. Then it gets easy again. We go down to A with the ring finger, and then down to G with the pinky. So here we go from D. Good, we're going to do that again. Real quick, I want to note that I'm using really exaggerated gestures here to make it really obvious how my fingers are moving. You don't have to lift your fingers that high up off of the chanter. However, you also want to make sure you're lifting them at least high enough, especially when you're playing the bagpipes. It's partly because when you're playing the bagpipes, the holes are way bigger, and also there's just a lot more air going through. If you were to get your finger like really close to the hole but not quite touch it, you'd actually affect the pitch, because the air coming out of there would be affected by your finger being so close to it. So we want to have enough clearance off of the chanter that the air is going to be able to come out unobstructed. So sometimes I do have students who they're just trying to conserve energy and try to stay close so they can get back to the note again, so they don't want to get disoriented way out here in the air. But they'll just barely lift their finger like that much, when we're playing a scale. And that's not quite enough. How much is enough? It's not a super precise thing. I can't tell you how many millimeters are exactly enough, but just, something like this. You want to get some distance off of the chanter. Here we go. From D down to G once again. Good, we're going to do that together one more time. D down to G. So last thing, if you have found that you need to take a breath in between each note, you kind of go. That's perfectly fine. Start that way, perfectly fine. But try to work up to the point where you can go from the bottom up to D on one breath, and from D down to the bottom on one breath. If you're having a lot of trouble doing that, if it's because it takes a long time to go from one note to the other because you have to think about where your fingers are going, that's perfectly fine. Keep doing that, and eventually it'll get really easy. But if you're finding that it's just taking a lot of air to get each note out, pending any pre-existing conditions that you might have with lung capacity, then that could indicate something being wrong with your instrument setup. So if you know somebody who plays bagpipes, take your practice chanter to them and just ask them, like, is this normal? Is my chanter playing at a good pressure? Some things to keep an eye on, and sorry, I've got spit all over my reed now. But take a look at your reed. you probably have a plastic reed like this. If you open it up and you have a wooden reed, those are cool because it's probably really old, but they're really hard to play on. So you'll want to get a practice chanter reed that's more like this. They come in different colors and stuff. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. But you also will want to look at the base of it. It should be wrapped in some kind of string. Usually it's going to have a wax coating on the string. If there's no string, then there might be air escaping around the reed. So your chanter might be basically sucking a lot of air out of your lungs without making noise. So you want to have a nice snug fit, and the way you get that is by using some string. If you don't have what pipers call waxed hemp or even unwaxed hemp around, just dental floss will work fine. So you just wrap the bottom of your reed up, and then you should feel a nice snug fit in there. Like, I mean, I can turn it upside down and stuff. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't have to be so tight that I end up breaking the reed trying to put it in there, but you want a nice tight seal. So if you're finding that it's really hard to get through that bottom half of the scale on one breath, take a look at maintenance for your instrument.